Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Imperfect Parent. I'm Amber and this is Ryan, and we're so thankful that you guys are watching this, and today we have a pretty cool episode that we're excited to show you guys. But Ryan, you want to tell us a little bit about this Imperfect Parent thing?
Yeah, just a reminder on why we're shooting this video. We don't believe there is any perfect parent. And we got to talking, you and I were talking about creating a resource for those of you who just feel like, man, I'm not sure I get this whole parenting thing right.
I feel like I'm always failing at it.
But that's what we feel too, right?
Yeah.
And so we wanted to create a resource that kind of let you in on the fact that there is not a bar of what it looks like to be a perfect parent. It's a journey. It's a constant journey. It's a conversation. And we wanted to bring people in and have conversations with them about what it looks like to be a parent these days. And so who do we talk to today?
So today we're talking to Clint, who is kind of exciting because this is one of our first ones that we've had that gears towards parents of students.
Yes.
Not just younger kids. And so Clint has been on staff here at Cornerstone for like 10 years.
Yeah, almost 10 years, yeah.
And he's been in student ministries practically that whole time,
Almost,
kind of in and out.
the whole stint.
And so today he's talking about the influence that friends have on our kids' lives.
Yeah, it's going to be a great conversation. I, as a dad, I'm excited to talk to him. So let's jump in and talk to Clint about what it looks like to help our kids with their friendships. All right, hey Clint, thanks so much for hanging out. I've been looking forward to this conversation. I know Amber and I have been talking a lot about the kids that we lead, which are a little younger than the kids that you lead here at Cornerstone as you program and pastor kids that are in that student age, that middle school, high school. Yeah. And I was just telling Amber before we started that this is a really real topic for me as I dropped my fourth grader off, just started school, and I suddenly realized we are on the doorstep of a friend conversation that is shifting. The influence I have as a parent, I'm suspecting might be waning, and I'm a little nervous. So I've been looking forward to talking to you. But first, tell me this. What kind of influence do my kids' friends really have on them, and do I have something to be afraid of? Like, give me some help here.
Yeah, totally.
But give us hope.
I don't
Give us some hope, yeah.
I don't know if afraid is the right word, but definitely I want you to be aware of the influence they have. And so, the answer directly to your question is a lot.
Okay.
Friends have a lot of influence on our kids, especially as they get older, especially as they enter those teenage years. And I've seen it as a youth pastor. I've seen it in my kids as they've grown. But the research also shows it. And so I believe it was like the 1960s or something that Gallup did this poll where they got some research and some data together about like the top 3 influences in a student's life, in a teenager's life. And back in the 1960s, which was like 60 years ago.
A long time ago.
The top
Before
3,
any of us were born, probably.
Yeah, I never experienced this, but the research will tell us that the top 3 influences were parents were number 1.
Okay.
Teachers were number 2. This is with teenagers.
Yeah. Okay, wow.
Yeah, parents number 1, teenagers number 2, and spiritual leaders were number 3.
Really?
So yeah, pastors, we got on the list.
All right. Hey, that's awesome. And so
that was the 1960s.
What's now?
So it's changed.
60 years later.
I didn't want to think about that.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right. Hold on.
Okay, I'm getting ahead of things.
Okay. 60 years later now in 2019, they've done similar research, and the data now shows that the top 3 influencers are, number 1 is friends.
Wow.
And then number 2 is actually the media.
Okay.
And then number 3 is parents.
Wow.
And so, yeah.
At least we made the top 3.
Yes, we're still on the list as parents, but friends is now considered to be that top influence in a teenager's life. So yes, the older they get, the more influential their friends are going to become.
With that amount of influence, Clint, I can imagine in your ministry, you're seeing a spectrum of parents that do and don't have, maybe they're higher on that list for their individual kid, but what does that mean for parents who maybe I'm struggling with that? It's ranked a little. I feel like I'm losing some of the influence. What does that mean for me as a parent? Again, I have a Jackson who's in 4th grade.
Yeah.
What do I need to start thinking about as a parent when I weigh how much influence friends are going to have? What do I need to be thinking about?
Well, I think the first thing that I would tell like maybe a parent if they came and asked me about this question would just be to embrace it. That statistic is not lying to us. It's true. And like I think of my dad growing up. He used to always ask me the famous question, if all of your friends jumped off a bridge, would you? The answer to that question is yes. Especially nowadays. Like, peer pressure is real and it's not going away. And so friends are going to influence friends. And so I think that's the wrong question to ask. Like, we have to embrace that friends are just going to influence our kids. And so instead of trying to get them to stand up more to peer pressure, I think the question becomes, how can I get them to make better friends or spend more time with these friends and maybe less time with these friends or something like that.
So instead of fighting for that number one spot, help to kind of manipulate where the kids are going with their friend groups.
Yeah, and that sounds like a negative word, but I love that word manipulate because I think that's kind of what we do. Maybe a positive word would be influence.
Probably.
Okay.
As our kids get older, like, let's be strategic in how we're parenting them through influence and not really control. It's like my 4-year-old. He's just going into preschool.
Yeah.
I literally can control the friends he hangs out with.
Absolutely.
If he has a friend or a family member that, like, I don't want him to hang out with, like, he won't hang out with him because I'm not going to drive him and drop him off there.
Right.
But as soon as we drop our kids off in kindergarten, we start to feel that control slip away, right? I just dropped off my 5-year-old at kindergarten. The first question I asked him when he got home was, "Hey, buddy, did you make any friends?"
Yeah.
And I felt so like there was no control over that, and I wanted him to have friends, but I wasn't asking him anything about did you make the right friends or what, like kind of steering him in that direction. I think we're just happy that our kids have friends to start with, and then they kind of get into the wrong crowd, and now all of a sudden we're going, oh, shoot, make better friends.
I'd imagine there's people watching, and I feel this way a little bit. Like, again, I'm going, okay, I got a 4th grader about to be in that switch is going to happen. How do I manipulate? Let's use the word influence. What are some ways that you would advise? Like, how do I do that without making my kid resent me?
Right.
Yeah.
Because at that point, when they start getting to vote with their feet, so to speak, they get to go over there. They get to make that friend when we're not around. How do you press your influence there?
Well, I want to say one thing real quick. To answer that question, there's 2 things. Number one, I think it's super important for us to know why our kids are making the friends that they're making or being drawn to the crowds that they're being drawn to. And this is not just true of teenagers. This is true of all people. We typically get drawn to the people that accept us the most and reject us the least. Okay, so just imagine
Accept
yourself.
us the most, reject us the least. Okay.
Yeah. So just imagine yourself walking into a new environment. Maybe it's a new job, a new city, whatever. Now picture your kid walking into the first day of school.
Yeah.
Who are they going to choose to hang out with?
Yeah.
The people that are most like them, or at least look the most like them, the people that are least threatening to them. And they don't, so in other words, what I'm saying is they don't necessarily choose their friends. They just choose people that are not going to reject them.
Yeah.
And so that's not necessarily wisdom. That's just
reality,
kind of wandering.
Yeah.
Almost survival when you first initially go into that setting. Yeah.
as a parent, how do
So before our kids are, when our kids are in those transitional seasons,
yes, okay,
right, we can start to have those intentional conversations with them. Hey, buddy, who do you want to become? What are your dreams? What are your hopes in life? And when we ask those questions, then we start to go, okay, what kinds of friends do you want to hang out with then? We're helping them choose friends, not just be chosen.
You know, it reminds me of what we talk about at Cornerstone a lot, which is that imagine the end kind of philosophy. We talk to parents a lot about this, not what your child will become, not those like things that our society says are big.
But the
like what
kind of person are they going to become?
Who are you going to be? And when so much of who you are is tied to who you spend time with, that there's an application there for our kids too. And I love the idea of capitalizing those moments when
intentionally parenting towards that end goal of when they're an adult. What kind of person
and
are they
how
going
much
to be?
impact that interesting.
Yeah, and then helping them just become aware that the people that they do spend time with will determine sort of the quality and direction of their life. So if they're wanting to go in this direction, then helping them understand that their friends are going to be the ones that are really going to move them in that direction. Because the chances are, like, when our kids start hanging out with the wrong people, like, they kind of know they're doing that. And yeah, they might reject us when we're trying to kind of sneak in there and help them find better friends. But the reality is they want our help, and they're going to accept our wisdom when we do take the time to have those conversations with them. They just might not know how. And so I think we can start that conversation before. Kind of the during and the after is the tougher part.
Well, and that's where my brain was going. Okay, this sounds great for someone like me who's right on the edge of doing this, and I have not. So far my kids have made pretty good decisions, mainly because I can control everything about who they hang out with.
Yeah.
But I know that you've counseled, you've talked to students, you've seen students, you've talked to parents. Parents are watching right now who go, sounds great,
right?
But you don't know the choices my kid has already made.
Yeah.
What do I do?
What do I do if they're already?
They're not listening to me anyway. They've
a
already
bad friend group.
This is so. The first way I'd answer that question is, don't underestimate like the control and the influence that we still have as parents. Like you said earlier, we're still on that list. You know what I mean? We still have influence. I like to think of it in terms of dials or knobs. I think of like when I'm driving my family around as a dad, like I have control over the radio. You know, like I get to control the volume, the bass, the treble.
Yes.
I can even control the rear versus the front, speakers.
Yeah.
If I don't want them to hear something, I can just turn up the front, turn the rear down. Like I have so much control because I'm in the driver's seat. Now, what I don't have control over is whether or not they're going to love the music that I love.
They don't?
No.
Come on, Clint.
But I can control what they're listening to.
Okay.
And see, even parents of teenagers, we still have control over where our kids are going, how much money they have to get there or do the things that they want to do. And I think sometimes as parents, we can get into this mindset like we just don't have any control because it's starting to slip away. And so my question would be, what knobs or dials can you turn in your student's life, whether it's up or down, to help them make wise friends? Like at church, Ryan, as you know, we have so many programs that are intended just to help parents turn those dials up and go, I want to get my kid into a small group. And so I'm going to take them to the small group every Thursday night so that they can be with a healthy leader and 6 other healthy peers that are kind of pursuing Jesus. Now, obviously, it's not perfect because there's people there. But the idea is that we're putting them around a circle of people that are going to help them.
For them.
Yeah, I think of my own experience as a middle schooler, and I remember one experience, and this, we talk about the word, like the phrase wider circle, and my parents, I don't know if they had that language and that polishedness, but I remember one issue we had where I was a jerk. I was not. And they intentionally drove me down to church. Like they turned a dial and they're like, no, and they dropped me off and they knocked on the student pastor's door and they're like, no, you need to talk to him because and it's like there was still a certain amount of control to put me in a place where influence could happen, even though that's the last thing I wanted right then.
Yeah, and I've had so many conversations, and our small group leaders here at Cornerstone have had so many conversations with parents about, well, tell me some information about your kid. Oh, they like art. Oh, they like soccer. Oh, this is what they're struggling with. Yeah. And then when they come to these groups and into our churches, like we know how to engage with them, how to make them feel accepted. And so that's like turning a dial. It's having a conversation. It's it's being strategic or manipulative, however you want to look at it. Another thing though is like what dials you need to turn down. I mean, you as parents, like I said, you have the keys to the car still. You have the finances. You don't have to sign them up for soccer if their soccer friends are the ones that are causing them to fall. I know, like...
It'll make you unpopular with your kid.
Right.
Yeah. Or I know that your family loves soccer and you think they're going to get the scholarship. Yeah. But let me just be blunt. What do you love more? Your kid's future or them being on the JV soccer team? You know what I mean?
That
like,
idea of imagine the end. Like you got to look a little further than where you're at right now in that parenting moment and be shaping the kind of person you want them to be.
Yeah, totally.
Again, people watching, moms, dads, they're in the middle of this. As we kind of wrap up our conversation, there's so much we could talk about, but I'd love to talk about 2 more things. What encouragement would you have for a parent who's they're just at that last edge of like, I don't have this, and then any resources that you would point us to, either at my stage where I'm just about to do this, or that parent who's right in the middle of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've looked countless numbers of moms and dads in the eyes as a youth pastor over the last decade and just seen them tearing up talking about their kids. Like, I understand the ramifications here. I understand this is not easy. I would say 2 things to close that out. Number 1, Just because our influence is going away doesn't mean that they don't crave our acceptance as parents. In fact, I would say that even as an adult, the number one thing that people crave is the acceptance of their mom and dad. And don't ever forget that as a parent. And I think what that means is if we can out-accept their friends, they're not going to necessarily start to need that and crave that as much as they do now. And what that means is our kids are unique and they're goofy and they're weird and they sometimes mess up. And so as our kids get older, maybe we lighten some of the punishments and turn up some of the grace. And maybe our first response is, I know you messed up, but I'm here and I love you. I can't thank my mom enough for when she did that when I was in high school and college and even as an adult, because she showed me that she's accepting me for who I am. If we can learn how to accept our kids and kind of accept them even more than their friends, they're not going to crave that as much from their friends. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. I think it maybe said a different way. You're fighting. You look past some of the actions to fight for the heart of your kid.
Yeah.
To go, that is more important. That is the key thing.
I remember reading a story. I think it was Billy Graham.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
It was a famous pastor. Okay. It was his kids. It was his kid writing the story.
Okay.
And he was writing about when he was kind of like being a knucklehead and partying and like he was totally just rejecting his father's faith. And his father was like, he was feeling guilty about it. And so one night he just totally blew by his curfew, came home late, drunk, whatever. And he said he walked in the door and he was like, oh my goodness, my father's in the middle of a Bible study with like some really famous church leaders. And so he's like, oh, this is going to be horrible. And his father, Billy Graham, stood up and in front of these famous church leaders, he just started to brag about his son. And he said, have you guys met my son? He's the most amazing, and he started listing what the things that made him awesome. And he said, right there in front of everyone with me just like weathered and broken down and just guilty, I just felt that grace of God. And he's like, that's what changed me. You know what I mean? His father just accepting him even in his worst.
Yeah.
And he's like, man, that's what changed me. So I think that kind of shows like what we still can do.
Yes.
Even in the middle of the war and even in the middle of the fight and even in the middle of our kids making these bad decisions, it's like, let's just surround them with acceptance and love and grace. And I think that's what's ultimately going to help them change and help them begin to come to us. And then lastly is prayer.
Yeah.
And I don't say that just because I'm a pastor. What prayer does, especially in this context, is it releases the pressure that we face as parents to take the responsibility of who our kids are becoming, right? Like the reason we're worn down on this is because we feel like this is our job.
We need to fix it.
Yeah.
Make it all good. Yeah.
When we take it to God, we go, oh, you love them more than I did. I do. You created them. And we just start to shift that responsibility back over to God. And it frees us up then to continue on that journey. So resource-wise, there's a book by Carey.
Nieuwhof.
Yeah.
We're laughing because we always you always joke with me about his name, and it's just a funny inside joke.
I can never pronounce it.
Carey Nieuwhof.
It's called Parenting Beyond Your Capacity. It talks about this principle that we've talked about. There's a website called cpyu.org.
Okay.
It stands for Center for Parent and Youth Understanding. Lots of good resources and articles there. And those are the two I could think of off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, Clint, thanks for hanging out, and thanks for
you.
being a friend of mine. I know that I'm going to be in your office as my kids get into your ministry, and I'm going, hey, remember that podcast, that video cast we did? I need some help. But I really appreciate it. And Amber, any last thoughts that you have?
No, thank you for bringing some insight into this. I know it's a scary world to have teenagers.
Yeah, totally.
Thanks,
absolutely, guys.
Thank you.
Gosh, what a great conversation. I know we only scratched the surface of what it looks like, and I feel like there's so much more we could have talked about when it comes to this idea of helping our kids navigate the tricky shift in influence from us being their primary source of influence to friends. But he mentioned some resources. What was the first one? Was a website?
So I'm going to make sure I get this right. cpyu.org. And he mentioned that this is a great place to find some good articles and resources for parents who are dealing with students and lots of different things, but specific to like good friend groups,
Yeah.
and how can we have that influence? Maybe call
Yes.
it manipulate, but try to help our kids make good choices on who their friends are.
Yeah, and then he also talked about the book Parenting Beyond Your Capacity, which I've also read. It's a great book. It really helps, I think, me as a dad understand some really basic things I can wrestle with to help gain and keep influence in the life of my kid, which does shift over time. And that's just a natural thing. You can't stop that, but you can fight for that.
Because the reality of it is we love our kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we really, truly want the best for our kids, and we want them to become good people.
Yeah.
In 20 years, I want to be able to say, I really do want to hang out with my children.
Exactly. And I think the last thing I want to say is, if you're one of those parents who's in the middle of this and you're just going, gosh, I don't feel like I've done a good job, or I feel like things have happened to my kid, life situations have happened that are beyond my control, and they're in the middle of this friend choice thing and it's not going well. I know we have student ministries and kids leaders and kids pastors on every campus who would love to spend some time talking to you and get you additional resources. So I think just don't lose hope. Like, come talk to us.
Yeah, talk to us.
Let us partner with you.
At any campus, we are more than willing to work with you and your kids and try to get you guys on the right track to feeling like this parenting thing is not so overwhelming.
Exactly. So thanks for watching another episode. Subscribe so you get notified for every new episode that we put out on our Imperfect Parent channel. Thanks for watching, guys.